Howdy, howdy, howdy. Before I get into anything else, I wanted to show you some of the projects I've been doing, other than work and things around the garden and greenhouse and chicken coop, whatever. All of that other stuff. Personal projects. One of these was just kind of sitting here in the garage for a long time. So I found a new handle, fitted it on. I'm going to take lessons from this and apply it to my new handle here. Same length, I think. Yep, same length as that one. I can't remember the measurements. I don't care right now. And it's long enough. I like the length of it. Busy hour. I know the audio in my videos is not always the crispest, so thank you for your patience. But this is my new project. I think you can get an idea of what I'm trying to do here. Suggestions are welcome. I'm working with just a simple kind of metal saw. It's not this one, but it's one like this. You know, that's what I've got to work with. Nothing big. No big table saws or anything. At least not for metal. So you can get an idea of what I'm trying to do. Trying to lighten it up. Trying to follow certain patterns that I think would have been more conducive to sparring, to things along that nature. I can dull this as well, or sharpen it if I need. You know, the final product will be something inspired from the past, something that you could reasonably wield. Getting into, you know, folk self-defense, folk martial arts, that kind of stuff. I mean, I wanted to make a shape that would be recognizable and more suitable to actual combat in a, you know, in the martial arts sense, right? Something that is durable, something that a proven shape that was effective in actual, you know, in actual combat, whether it was just, you know, sparring or fighting off hordes and claiming booty. Because this is not, you know, I've done practice videos. I've uploaded some other things. I don't know. I'm getting into it. Just learning the basics. This is not for combat. This is obviously a woodsman axe, and I love it. It's the one I've featured this one before in my workout videos, and I really like the length of it. I like how it handles, and it's great exercise. But I'm going to take lessons from this. I don't know if you can see that. It doesn't fit on the handle the best, so I might, on this next one, do a better job of well, you get the idea, of fitting the axe to the head. Sand down whatever needs to be sanded, because this is kind of crude. I mean, it's kind of a socket that the axe, after a lot of work, will just, you know, it'll rest itself from the socket, essentially. So you do your best to pound it back in, but the way I'm going about it, I'm noticing wear and tear, basically. I don't know if you can see that, how the metal is curled over. That's from hammer strikes, obviously, to the head. But there's this other technique. You know, if you guys recognize woodcrafting or, you know, woodsman videos, guys who are professional at this, you can fit the axe head on fine with the strike from the butt. Kind of lift it up at the same time. You can, well, I don't know, even if that's necessary. But I've been trying that. Again, kind of novice at this, but taking lessons here, so I'm learning things. Shout out to those badass woodsmen who, you know, who make it look easy, but there's a lot that goes into it. And so when I have the time, this is what I spend my, these are my personal projects. So again, there's that shape. I think you get an idea of what I'm trying to do. Lighten it up, make it, trying to keep its durability. Again, amateur, but this is a shape closer. It would be closer to something actually functional in a martial context. So it's a labor of love, really. Because I've seen some really inspiring work, and just the rudimentary act of getting off my ass and putting in the sweat equity to bring this back into working order, flaws and all, it's really satisfying. It's gratifying. So I want to try that again, see how this goes, and let's get into the continuation of the religious conversation that I started in my last video, because that's something I've been wanting to get into for a long time. I've gotten a positive feedback and some interesting feedback, and there's just been a lot on my mind as I've been trudging along, doing all the things all the things life requires at this moment. So let's get into that. Hope you enjoyed this. All right, here after a good training session, getting back into grappling, into competition level fitness. No master here, obviously, but I'm competitive, and I'm really been enjoying it in the past month and a little bit. This is the progress that I've made so far on the project I was showing you. Cut out this triangle chunk out of the neck, I suppose. There's more I'd like to carve off or cut out, and I'd like to start grinding perhaps at this butt end. This isn't fixed on yet, and just seeing how it'll fit. I might need a new handle. We'll see. We'll see how it fits together. Lots of adjustments to make, some grinding to do, some more cutting, and we'll see. But I want the end product to be something competent, something that could actually withhold stresses of sparring. I don't want to be pissing around here. And in the same way, this leads to a good analogy for what I've been making progress in regards to folk faith and taking folk religion more seriously. Like I said, I don't want to be messing around. I don't want to be satisfied with historical revisionism or historical fiction. Frankly, I don't want to settle for a fan club. I want something that will be recognized and respected by the gods and the ancestors. Something with precedence. There are challenges to that. I'd like to get into a bunch of that. But that serves as a good analogy. I want a folk faith that stands up to, just as in the past, I had to stand up to the trials of the environments that our peoples came from, and give them vitality and strength and the favor needed to push on. Without that, none of us would be here. None of us would even be pious, even following other paths, if they had not set the groundwork. And that's a fact. I don't know how that can be disputed. Perhaps I'll get into that later. Anyways, I'll start this way. It doesn't go over my head, the other philosophical positions that people can hold, right? I understand that. I understand the groundwork for a lot of that, and the rationale. A lot of that is comprehensible, coherent. That's fine, and you can still be white positive, be agnostic or indeed an atheist. That's fine. I'm not making that case. I'm not putting that forward. I'm putting forward the case for native folk faith, native folk religion. And I'll start out this way. Atheist, back in the Bronze Age in Greece, didn't mean the same thing that it means today. What it meant back then is closer to today, as far as I understand, to what we mean by agnostic. Atheist was someone who did not necessarily not believe in metaphysical reality, or that there are gods in this realm and in other realms and behind natural works, all of those other things, but that they had determined for whatever reason not to be pious to the gods and the ancestors in the traditional sense. That's what an atheist was back in those days. Someone who, an entirely materialistic, atheistic point of view was impossible for most of history, and there are various reasons for that. Being in close proximity to death is one of those reasons. Lady Death was their next door neighbor constantly. The thread of fate could be cut at any moment. That is proven to make people, in most cases, that is going to increase their levels of piety. That is certainly the case for me. I have lots of gnosis on this, and I'm sure many people have. I've heard stories where they've seen where people have felt the favor of certain of our storm gods, the friend of man, often showing them favor and passing a tornado over their house and things along those lines. And I have similar gnosis as well. So death and what's the term I'm looking for? I don't know. Proximity to death. That is something that will make you think in a more profound and spiritual way. Also, and ironically enough, I wanted to touch on this in my last video. This became apparent after certain responses that I got, and it's understandable why. It became apparent to me that we carry forth, even as people who are more spiritual and dipping their foot in the water, as far as folk spirituality is concerned, we still inherit a modern, secular, materialist sort of list of expectations in the back of our mind. That's understandable. Even as traditionalists, we often have to wrestle ourselves from those expectations. Understandable. We kind of gets downloaded with us interacting with this soulless society. But it's baggage that people bring forth. It's a smokescreen that prevents you from seeing a more clear picture, from seeing more clearly through the eyes of our ancestors, as best as we can understand it. It prevents you from being able to do that. And ironically enough, learning about evolutionary biology, evolutionary psychology, has made me more pious, really. My personal gnosis, again, it's as if Velez opened the tome of beasts, and has shown, through natural process, the principles of nature. It's it's really eye-opening stuff. That's my gnosis. Other people will have other accounts, and all of that is comprehensible in a traditional worldview. There's not this strict there's not this strict line between disciplines. Uh, these things could have been far more integrated, I guess you could say, in spiritual perspectives. Anyways, yeah, it's kind of ironic. Learning about evolutionary biology has brought me out of this secular materialist sort of mindset, or helped me on that path at least. I understand a lot better, the things that were non-obvious about, accounts of sacrifice to the gods, whatever form that would take, libations, other rituals, the way certain celebrations were carried out, gleefully carried out, with joy, and things that just don't make sense with a certain secular lens that we're all kind of downloaded with. So what do I mean? What was it about evolutionary biology, psychology, from a novice perspective, that turned my eye back to a traditional worldview? Well, and this has really been helpful with all the research that Edward Dutton has compiled and done himself. Featured other great researchers along these lines. Plenty of disagreement there with certain things that he promotes, but the natural principles are there, and they're pretty demonstrable. Groups over time that select for religiosity compete far better, because religiosity selects for pro-social behaviors, things that promote vitality, things that promote child rearing. You get all these sorts of traits that are selected for. Strength and competition in men. I mean, we literally have harder foreheads for that reason. Kind of armor plated in certain, bone plated. Other traits like that, agreeability, as far as group cohesion, conscientiousness, being able to set your mind to a task and just keep going, keep pushing along, and yielding success over time. Industriousness, I guess, is part of that. It follows from that. It helps keep people content. There are all sorts of benefits from folk faith, and if we did not have that, again, we would not be here. We would not have been successful. Our peoples would not have been successful. Indeed, they would not have been able to inherit and integrate other religions into their psyches if they hadn't have had that preceding native spiritual perspective. That would have been impossible if we hadn't have had these things. So why not get back to base, right? I mean, yeah, there's all sorts of incentive for it. Yeah, in-group cohesion, out-group aversion, all sorts of traits. You can look into that. Again, this is a novice perspective, but you don't need to be an expert to start to pick up on the patterns here. And that's another thing. If with the points that I raised before in my last video, if you see the same sorts of patterns popping up again and again, no matter what source you're looking at, no matter what lenses the authors might have been working through, the facts remain that these were stratified societies, that there were levels to society, there were castes, right? There were an aristocracy, that a warrior aristocracy that appealed to divine ancestry very often. Think of Wotan or what's the Anglo-Saxon? Wotan. That's the German. Woden. Anyway, so Anglo-Saxon kings would claim to be descended from that line. Same thing in all sorts of in the Slavic context. Aristocracy claiming divine lineage. A philosophic caste, a priest class, druid, wizard, whatever. That was another part of the triangle here, the hierarchy. Merchants, craftsmen, this sort of class, they have values associated with them, and tillers of the field, farmers, agriculturalists, other things like that. And they all had values. They had clan gods and gods that they would appeal to, and it wasn't an artificial tyranny for a lot of. For most of history. These things. What I'm getting at is that you don't see these patterns pop up again and again and again, and then assume that it all has to be fabricated. Unless you're committed to somehow trying to drive a round wedge into a square hole. However that analogy works, I think I mixed that up. You get my point. I like I said before, or I think I said, anyways, I don't want to be engaged in historical revisionism. I don't want this to be a fan club. If I see these patterns in nature, I can take a hint. This was how society was for the longest time. And you can't just assume that it's an artificial tyranny. It's not like these things can't become tyrannical. Whatever class you're looking at, it's not like these things can't get out of whack. Of course, they would acknowledge that at the time. I guarantee you, and I can make that case, especially in the Greek and the Greco-Roman context. Aristotle talks about, and I believe it's Aristotle. I'm pretty yeah, talking about different forms of government and how the monarchy is one of the best and most virtuous, because a virtuous king has authority. People can't get in his way if he is genuinely divinely inspired and the gods favor him. His reign, his will is absolute, and great works will proceed forward. He will lead in glory the people under his care. And the inverse of that, if you get a shitbag, someone of bad breeding, and low base corruption, whatever, it will become a horrible tyranny. So because they were, they were living in these systems themselves, these natural political systems themselves. They understood the risks inherent. There's an example of this in a Polish movie, Stara Bessin. This isn't the best movie. There are a lot of very good criticisms to make about it, but it's a pretty good movie. There are a lot of good things about it too. Stara Bessin, Kiedy Słońce było Bogiem, when the sun was a god. It's about a traditional Polish folk legend of a tyrannical king usurping the throne, or becoming tyrannical over time, being corrupted by an illegitimate bitch, honestly, of a wife, and her illegitimate son. And the clans have to come together, much like a moot, much like a thing in the Germanic context. Slavs had a very, very similar thing going on. Clans would arrive and discuss, and I mean, they leave all sorts of things out in the movie. I mean, they don't even mention the names. They don't even mention Perun. I mean, how you can't mention Perun in that pre-Christian Slavic society? I don't know. It fucking baffles me, man. But I'll get into that later. Anyways, there are some good things about that. There is absolute historical precedence for that. Like I said, very similar thing with the Germanic tribes and the thing, the moot, I believe it was. The council of elders, people coming from leaders from all sorts of tribes coming together, and not just in the case of tyranny. That's one thing. For all sorts of things, for celebrations, for all sorts of things. So there's one tangent. What was another? Maybe I'll get back to, yeah, I'd like to get back to this. I'd like to get back to some of the baggage, some of the materialistic, secular baggage that clings to our minds, even as we're trying to get into spiritual perspective. It's not obvious from a secular perspective how there's any rationality or pragmatism to making a libation, for example, for pouring out ale in libation to whatever god it is. From a materialistic perspective, yeah, I mean, it seems like a waste. Sure. There was nothing pragmatic in a traditional perspective about withholding, about not being able to give up your precious ale in gratitude to the gods of your people. If they have given you the best, you better expect that you ought to give them something in return. And people seem to think that there's sort of a passivity inherent in ritual, that if you, I don't know, I guess it's just an inheritance from other non-native faiths, and the lasting legacy that they've had. But there was nothing passive about, living a life of piety did not exclude you in any way from great deeds
In fact, they were meant to encourage them. These were the kinds of oaths that you would swear to the gods and to the ancestors, to do great things. Because they have given you the best, you were expected to give something good in return, and you don't get something for nothing. There's nothing pragmatic about withholding. I mean, you can't even. So people will say that they will appeal to one or another god and claim that they're being respectful, yet that you can't part with a loaf of bread. You think that's a waste? Well, you have to understand that you're saying two different things. If you're really trying to get into a traditional perspective, and you want, as you say, and I'm going to take you genuinely, if you really want a relationship with that deity, I mean, think about it this way: you can't kiss your mother on the cheek. I mean, you're that goddamn proud that you can't, shake your father's hand or give your uncle a hug, whatever. Give them a loaf of bread. I mean, that analogy has its limits, but it's striking home in one sense. If you really want to emphasize the kinship aspect of these deities, then you've got it. I mean, it's like the relationship that I think this might be kind of an interesting point. I'd like to see what people think about this. But there's something really impressive in in the portrayal. All the historical anachronisms and other things aside, the Godfather, the level of tradition and respect, the honor culture in that. I think there's so much there. There's so much tradition there. In all the modern dressing, but that was just the ritual behind all of that, and it's just so natural. It's so it really is a sort of a window into a pious traditional view. The I'd like to get into that more. I've been thinking about that because there was something in the portrayal of the respect the family had for each other, and what they were willing to sacrifice for each other. Right? Despite all the hardships and all of that, there's just this natural rule of honor, this expectation, something very traditional in that. So really, people would take offense if going back to the example about atheism in the Bronze Age. They would take offense to that. I mean, you're too goddamn proud to offer up your precious ale. You can't even do that, and you claim you want to have a relationship with you want to you want favor and you want pick your deity. You want Perun to smile on you before battle, or Yarilo to bless and give you good crops. Whatever the case may be, take your pick, whatever deity, and whatever offering you would make. You're too goddamn proud to give to give a loaf of bread, a slice of cheese, some good ale, some milk, whatever it's going to be. Really? And you want a relationship with them. That's how they would take it. Again, I'm not the taskmaster here. I've had to improve my misgivings as well, to go back on a lot of things, and there's still more corrections that I'd like to make, and more points I'd like to make along these lines. But that's how they would have reacted for most of history. So just keep that in mind, because they would. I mean, it's like not not kissing your mom on the cheek. What the hell is wrong with you, bud? You, they would react that way. So, uh, yeah, putting forward the case for faith, for a traditional perspective. Not any other. I'm not satisfied with merely talking about the gods in a metaphorical sense, or um, or engaging in historical revisionism every time I see something that is not immediately apparent to me. I'm gonna take time to be able to sort through these things, and indeed you'd have to. I grant that people are going to be struggling with certain things, as I did, and wanting um, uh, genuine explanation, or maybe people are just figuring out where they really settle, where their mind and their heart's really at. That's fair. That's fair. But I make those points, as particularly the respect or disrespect shown in someone in a traditional context not taking part in folk ritual, in the piety of that is expected of you in the polis, in the community. That puts you in a different category. So what I would recommend to people who do have those misgivings, and I don't mean to come down again, like I was saying, I'm not a fucking taskmaster here. I'm just I'm just giving you the perspective that they would have had. So in the modern context, if you find yourself kind of out of place at a bloat, at any of these rituals, Baltic, Slavic, Germanic, Celtic, whatever, Italic, um, you can respectfully watch. That is not the place to raise questions when they're going through the ritual, when they were showing piety to whatever deity it is. That is not the place to raise questions. You can talk to them after. You can talk to them after the ritual has gone through. You can raise all these questions. I guarantee most people will be able to level with you and say, yeah, I understand this is strange from this perspective, but here are the sources that we're basing this off of. Here's the research behind it. Here's the folk traditions that survived that we were able to, revitalize, and this is why, we every I don't know. Think of something from a Slavic. Every spring, this is why we take the effigy of Mojana and light it, set it aflame, and put it in the river. A symbolic passing, symbolic drowning, and passing of the season of winter, giving over to Yarilo for the spring. That's why we do this. Take your pick, whatever it's going to be. I guarantee they can level with you. They can answer these certain things. Just don't raise questions in the middle of the bloat, whatever it's going to be. Don't presume that you have a better way that is higher than precedence, than tradition that has been set forth and is there for a reason. Because that's not gonna. I mean, if you, I guess I'm appealing to people who are genuine when they want to appeal to the gods, but they still have certain misgivings about traditional expectations and the things that go along with that. That's fine. It's fine to have your personal journey with this. Like I said in the first video, just if you were ever invited to one of those rituals, don't come in with modern interpretations and freaking um, a secular lens, and uh, try to tip your fedora and debate with people during these. Don't bring that there. And just the same, right? If the shoe's on the other foot, I don't get to proselytize to folk if they're if they're settled in another philosophical position. That's fair. I'm willing to compromise. Fair enough. I'm not gonna try to make the case for the gods. I'm not gonna try to shove Seneca on Providence down their throat. It's a waste of effort. And I would be the ass. I would be the asshat in that exchange. Fair enough. Fair enough. So just keep that in mind. That's been more of my thoughts. Kind of rambling on traditional perspective. The Godfather's made kind of an impression on me. I might get into other pieces of the traditional world that I can glean from that piece of art. I've really been enjoying that. Um, but yeah, think about the respect, the honor in of the clan, and the reputation, um, the importance of reputation, and the importance of meritocracy and hierarchy, and you'll kind of see where I'm getting at with the analogy that I made from there. Yeah, that was a bit of a ramble. I hope that was enjoyable. And you all take care.